weeks ago at the Southern Fried Gaming Expo in Atlanta, Georgia, GenXGrownUp had the opportunity to sit down with dethroned video game champion Billy Mitchell. Many of our viewers who caught that interview here on our YouTube channel felt, and rightfully so, that some of Mitchell's answers seemed to be vague and evasive. We thought possibly that was due to the fact that later that same evening of our interview, he held his Road to Redemption seminar, during which he laid out his defense. Regardless of which side of this high score controversy you fall, we felt it was important to hear Billy's side of the story and allow him to present that case. So we caught up with him via phone to follow up on the questions from our initial interview. Here then is that follow-up.
Billy Mitchell, welcome back to GenXGrownUp. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm always good, always, and today's no exception.
You know that we did a little interview with you in Atlanta at the Southern Fried Gaming Expo. Tons of comments, tons of views. It's doing really well as far as people wanting to find out what Billy Mitchell has to say about one topic, and one topic in particular, the Donkey Kong high score controversy that's been going on between yourself and the people who now run Twin Galaxies. So before we get into any of the details, I wanted to ask you one straightforward question, point blank. Did you use an emulator or MAME or a modified board of any kind in achieving the high score that has now been removed from Twin Galaxies for Donkey Kong?
Okay, the answer is no, and then I'll expand on the answer. It's funny, I guess you've read a lot that's come out, because for the longest time I heard the word MAME. I guess I heard it 1,000 times. Oh, they had him cornered. Oh, MAME. They even had the version of MAME. And it's funny you're asking me this, because it's their job to prove that I used something, but you're asking me to prove that I didn't. That is actually backwards from the way it's supposed to be, but I'm going to run with it. So, MAME. And then right at the end, when everyone realized it couldn't be, because according to the people who created MAME, the version that they said it was an exact duplicate of didn't exist. And it didn't exist for years, until years after the scores. So now, when they made their decision, they said they can't say that it's MAME. They just say that it's not arcade. It's not MAME, it's not arcade. And somebody said maybe it's extraterrestrial.
Right.
But we can get past that point, and we don't have to dwell on it. The answer is no. And it's not no from my point of view. It's no from the point of view of a gentleman who's the distributor who loaned us the game. He loaned it out of his house. It was brought to the place by a guy who does nothing but puts games out. It was hooked up by the technician of the world's largest arcade, and the owner and manager, and 3 Twin Galaxies staff people who were there. My own guy who saw to it that it was recorded by direct feed through a converter that nobody has ever worked with, anybody, until this year. All them people got it wrong? All them people made a mistake? No, I think it's possible it's a technology that they haven't used before. It certainly paints a situation where there are thousands of possibilities, and one at a time they're being looked through, they're being uncovered. And all of that is considering the fact that everybody's operating in an honest world, looking for an honest understanding. And I don't believe that is the case. But that's okay.
It was a true Donkey Kong board and a true Donkey Kong cabinet.
That is correct. And we don't have to split hairs. I can't find the tape. So they moved to other scores. The other scores, we'll just say the scores, the board was sent to and authenticated by Nintendo, by the senior engineer, and all of that was facilitated through the TG ownership. And it was sent to the area manager of GameStop, who hooked it up, who put it in the machine on video. He did it on camera, and he padlocked the game, a guy that I had never met, and he left the event. He came back on a Tuesday, 2 days after I had left. He unpadlocked it, they took the board out, and they sent it back to that senior engineer who authenticated it again as the same board that he had looked at, and then that board was returned. The paperwork, the airway bill, everything that happened back in 2007, I still have, and I supplied.
We've seen a couple of times where you've spoken like you did during our interview, where you've said, I'll be giving out some details soon. When we give out the details, you guys will understand my position a lot more and everything. But you hadn't, up until recently, really gone into the details of the entire situation. Why did you decide that now was the time to start coming forward? Why not like when it was first happening and they were really targeting you?
Well, in all respect to you, because your question, with all respect, you sound like a tabloid journalist here. First of all, all, I did supply information immediately where the board was certified. I supplied the information. I still had the copies and the receipts of the converter and everything that I used, and I supplied that which was immediately available to me. My first reaction was not to even comment. Okay, in order to give an intelligent answer, in order to backtrack as far as 14 years, okay, in order to gather that information, I was very sure they were going to find original tapes. Not to find no tape at all in one of the performances, and in other performances find not originals but copies. I was very sure something different was going to happen, but it didn't. So when I look at the ignorance and the unprofessionalism and the lack of due diligence that went on, I really question whether or not I did the right thing, even addressing the situation at all. But it affected other people, and so I decided to address it. I'm giving the information for a couple of reasons to the point that I have. And I'll just be straight with you, okay? I know you from the show. Mm-hmm. You were very kind. You always have been. You let me pick on you a little bit, but you always have been. I don't mean to sound funny. I could tell the story just about any venue in the hobby, maybe any venue in the world just about.
Oh, of course. You would have just about everybody's ear, for sure.
Right. I do a lot of shows, some of which I strictly have a business relationship with, many of which I have that plus a personal friendship with. And I have that personal friendship with the people at Southern Fried. And I thought, okay, why wouldn't I? And I told what I could tell up to that point. I had paperwork, some receipts, some testimonies, some copies, some emails, things that really make you scratch your head. And I said that I had them, and I was welcome and happy to share them with anybody who chose to speak to me afterwards. Many people did. And the fact of the matter is, I won't lie to you, I do all this against the advice of people who probably have a better knowledge of what should be done legally. But I'm not just going to sit silently. I don't go silently.
I do want to get to one thing that a lot of our viewers were asking, and that was for some of the specifics on what happened during your Donkey Kong High Score plays and the people that were involved, that were around, the video that was recorded to the separate monitors, and why, some people feel like that it looks separate, because I know during the panel you gave some very coherent answers to why those things looked weird if you've shown them in a certain light, but they have different explanations. So could you go into those details a little bit for us?
Well, when you use a direct feed, the converter does not draw the signal off of the RGB monitor. I didn't know that the converter doesn't pull the signal from there. The converter pulls the signal or the capture directly from the board. I learned that by calling the company. And so what you're looking at when you see somebody else's recording and you see it directly next to mine and you say, why does that look different? It looks different because one is being recorded with a camera pointed at the monitor. The other one is being recorded different because the signal is being captured from the board into the capture device, say a VCR, and then at a later time played on TV or CRT. So when they said, look, they look different, oh my gosh, it can't be a video game. It must be MAME. Well, when the gentleman came in the arcade and played them side by side, and first of all, we had trouble finding a CRT. We even went to the TV shop and the guy didn't have one, and we bought one online for $20 off like Craigslist or something. And when we put the Donkey Kong play on the screen, on the Donkey Kong screen, and we had the other one run through the converter onto the TV, it looked exactly like they said. And what I mean by that is they said it looked different. They said it couldn't be a video game monitor. They are correct. It's not. It never goes to the monitor. It goes from the board through the converter to the capture device. And what was kind of funny was as you saw them play side by side and you slowed it down real slow, the TV, the CRT signal was actually ahead of the RGB. It was kind of wild. And so that was it. That's what they said. That was their claim. And never was there a, oh, gee, oh, wow, is that how it works? Oh, is that what a converter does? Oh, now we understand. It was nothing. We simply moved the goalpost. And when we moved the goalpost, they said, this is drawing horizontal or vertical, and it should be drawing in the opposite direction. When finally we said, listen, guys, you're saying the finger girder only ever happened, and it only ever happened in MAME, and it only ever happened in this version of MAME, and everything that's happening is identical to that version of MAME.
I want to point out to what you're speaking about, because there are people who are probably going to watch and listen to this that aren't going to understand what you're talking about there. You're talking about the MAME version, and it was the 1.6, I believe, or something like that?
1.116.
1.116, thank you. That Twin Galaxies said it has to be from that specific version of MAME because the way the gameplay looks is exactly the way it behaves in that version of MAME. Is that where we're at?
It's only the specific version that makes it appear like that and not any other version. So they felt as though they clearly had it nailed down. When you put that together, I thought, I did. I mean, I'm scratching my head like, there's another explanation. I lived in an innocent world where I thought we were searching for an answer. And then when it was brought to our attention, the fact of the matter is go right on the MAME website. That version was not available until as much as 3 years later. And at that point, wow, I thought, oh, gee, that's the end of this. This is finally the stupidity. No, it's not. We're just going to say that it's not MAME, but it's not arcade.
So that's when the terminology changed then from MAME to not arcade.
Right. After saying, we're only here to determine if this is MAME. We're only here to determine if this is MAME.
Let's go to a more simplistic question. Do you plan on trying to duplicate the Donkey Kong high score feat to prove you don't need the emulator, that you didn't have to do anything that they say you did, that you can do it on a real board? Do you plan on doing that in the future?
For the small percentage of people who would believe that I did that improperly, I've seriously considered that, and I really have. I've thought to myself, wow, is that really what I want to go through? Well, the fact of the matter is, what I guess I'm going to do, is I'm going to do that exact feat or that score or the highest score, which is 1,062,000. The one that they can't find the tape on at all, and that I've even been questioned if it ever happened or if they ever even had the tape. But since now we do have Twin Galaxies officials who say, yes, they did have the tapes in hand, they just can't find them. So I guess what I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and do that score, okay, just to put that bit of stupidity to rest. But I'll call upon another point. When I did that score, that was a world record, okay? And the fact of the matter is, I don't know of anybody, and I don't. It can be brought to my attention. I'm sure I'm wrong with at least one person. But I don't know somebody who went to an event, who played, who produced a score that was a world record. I keep getting told, gee, why don't you do it at an event? Gee, why don't you do it in public? That's the only place I've ever done a score, okay, that I've submitted. So I guess I'm held to a higher standard.
We appreciate that you spent time with us here at GenXGrownUp, and we look forward to seeing what's next for you. We can't wait to see that DK high score. We'll talk to you another time.
Stay happy, sir. We'll talk again. Bye.
If you'd like to hear more, the full 30-minute edit of this interview is available on GenXGrownUp.com, or click the link in the description below to go straight to this special edition of our podcast. Thanks, we'll see you next time. Don't you know that you're a grown-up? Subscribe to GenXGrownUp by clicking right here and enable notifications so you won't miss a thing. Use the comments down below to tell us what you think, and while you're there, a thumbs up would be great too. Please share this online wherever you hang out. Connect with GXG on social networks by clicking right here. Basically, life sucks as a grown-up.